what you see me cutting here is half of the top of a free dining room table that I got. Most of it is a particle board composite thing, but the edge is a solid wood, and I'll use both sections of it to build a speaker cab. So I'll be just building a speaker cab, putting a woofer and tweeter in it, and powering that with the external speaker out jack on a Peavey Valveking 112 that I have. Cutting this particle board composite wasn't the most fun, but it ended up working out pretty well. And the blue tape there I used so that I could measure and mark a cut line, since this veneer was hard to get pencil or pen or anything to really show up very well. I'm cutting MDF here as well, you'll notice. That will be the front panel of this speaker cab. With my handy circle cutting router jig, I'll put the link in the description if you cut a lot of circles, and I know you can make your own jig, but this is very, very precise and easy to use. Works on a multitude of routers, and you may notice I have a 1/8" drill bit there using as the peg, because at this point in time I did not know where I had misplaced the 1/8" dowel that came with it. And you saw there these two panels placed on top of each other has a practically a cutout for the speaker to sit in. And this very top or front MDF panel, I'm just doing a small 1/8" round over. And I'm freehand freehanding the tweeter cutout. This is a kind of square faceplate, so the hole will start as a circle-ish for the magnet and terminals to slip through, but then the front panel will have a square-ish, it's like a rounded square cut out for the faceplate again to sit mostly flush with the front panel. And I put a little bit of salt between the two MDF panels. I'm sure you've seen that trick show up in one of your feeds, but it really does work wonders. When you have two big panels with glue, they tend to want to slide when you clamp them down, but the few salt grains keeps that from happening. And you saw I was able to sand off most of the veneer finish and was left with a raw wood veneer. I went a little too far in a few places, but at the end of the day, most of the finishing lining and such covered that up. Here's the back panel, making a big mess, trying to glue this up. Someday I'll learn to take my time and maybe not use so much glue, but this was a very snug fit, and all the glue that I used will certainly be keeping it together. And you'll see the front's already glued on there. And here's sanding off some excess glue and just giving it a final, I can't quite recall if it is something like 400 grit. I went kind of high, but I started high as well because I didn't want to remove too much of this veneer. So after a little bit of cleanup, I moved on to more sanding and removing some of the glue from the front, even with some chisels, because the squeeze out dried more than I expected and more than I saw. Then I took it outside and sprayed the faceplate with a truck bed paint. So this dries into a pretty hard kind of plastic, semi-rough texture. And I also taped up a border on the back, so there's a line of this. And at this point I wasn't sure where I wanted to put the brass. Probably would have changed how I painted it if I had known what my final decision would be with the brass, but it all came together all right with only a few rough lines. I'm using some E6000 glue. This is some wood trim from the table edge that I cut to size, sanded down, and this will be the trim for the front of this speaker cab. And again, if I'd thought through to the end a little bit more, I could have used wood glue to attach this to the raw particle board and MDF, and then taped it off to spray the paint, but instead I sprayed the whole front of it, and wood glue would not stick very well to that. And then I switched it up to super glue. So here we're now up to 3 different adhesives. Super glue to attach this brass, and I'll go around the edge of the front and back, and you'll see as well the corners or joining these front and back vertices will be lined with this little bit of brass as well. And I'm not really used to using super glue. I'm used to using wood glue and being able to make a mess and then cleaning it up after. But with super glue, it really pays to not make a mess to begin with. So I started being a little more careful how much I was putting on, where I was causing it to leak out of or accidentally touch. And I don't show you all of it, but you'll see the finished product at the end. Now this is the crossover, attaching a huge resistor and a smaller resistor as sort of an L pad. The main purpose is just to increase the resistance, because the output jack on my Peavey requires a minimum resistance. And so, as you can see, this one is a 100 watt rated 16 ohm resistor. And this is the first crossover I've made that is a series crossover. It can be done, and really in this case it's not even really that. It's so simple. It has 2 resistors and a capacitor. I used XSIM to come up with the crossover circuit, and I'll show that theoretical frequency response graph here in just a moment. But here's the finished product, at least as it sits now, with brass trim and corner pieces. I may add a grill. There's a jack on the back, obviously, that I didn't show, but links to most of these components will be in the description, as well as a link to my Etsy shop if you want me to build a custom speaker cab using these crossover components and speaker drivers. Better materials for the cabinet, of course, but check out my shop for other speakers or wood-related items as well. Here's the theoretical frequency response graph as calculated by XSIM. This is a 1 watt power into a system rated at 8 ohms. So if the speaker cab needs different resistance rating, the decibels would go up or down accordingly. But my wife and I both agree it sounds better, or we like the sound better than the Peavey cab, but decide for yourself here.